And so I wanted to share my story and kind of this whole process and this journey that I've been on. So hopefully, can you guys hear sound? Let me know in the chat if you can hear some sound. Hopefully you can hear it. Okay, cool. Scared me for a second. Anybody that knows me knows my tech curse is a real thing. So backing up from the beginning, my name is JD Daly. I am from the east coast of Canada, a place called Nova Scotia. Some of you may heard of it, some not. If you haven't, it's where the Trailer Park Boys was shot. That's kind of our claim to fame. So going all the way back to about 7 years ago, I hit my limit in the corporate world. That might resonate with some of you. The commute, the politics, the long, unfulfilling hours. I felt like I was trading more time, and my office was one of those like cool Google offices that put a ping pong table in and then decided that, oh, you need to work Friday and Saturday now. So I was just losing big aspects of my life. I was missing out on friends and weddings and all this fun stuff, and I just felt so unfulfilled. And the craziest part about it looking back was, I had a job that I think most people would dream of. Whenever I told my friends or family, they were so excited for me. But honestly, I couldn't do it anymore. I hated it. And then up until that point, I always had a good excuse. I always had something to hide behind, right? Like, the job before, I didn't like my manager, or I didn't like the job. I didn't like the work. I didn't like the pay. I didn't like the hours. Right. And finally, I was in a position where I had nothing to complain about. On paper, it was the perfect job. It was my dream job. It was what I was working and climbing the corporate ladder to do. And I was miserable, absolutely miserable. Every morning, I woke up and thought, when my alarm was going off, if I had a rich uncle, or how can I make enough money to not have to go into work that day. Right. And so I got to the point where I was like, I can't continue like this. I didn't have a good plan. I didn't have any genius strategy. I honestly just was like, screw this. I'm out. I quit. And so not long after, I started traveling. And while I was traveling, I started going down the rabbit hole of looking for ways to make money online. And I looked into everything. Like, I really, as far down as this rabbit hole went, that's as far as I went. Right, e-commerce and Amazon FBA and affiliate marketing and copywriting, book publishing, social media agencies, you name it. Right, I went down that rabbit hole. Even some of the stuff that everybody stumbles upon, like filling out surveys and mystery shops, just ridiculousness. Right, and nothing made sense. Nothing really clicked. I'd try a little bit, or I'd download a free course and get a little bit down the road and then realize this is not it. I always hit a roadblock. Either it had too much upfront cost, or looking forward, it was going to take way too damn long to learn how to make money in that segment. Right. And so finally, as some of you probably know, when you start searching these things, you start becoming a target. All of a sudden, I was getting pummeled with ads. And one of the ads was talking about this high ticket coaching market. And I thought, well, this is really interesting, but I don't know what I would coach. And then all of a sudden I seen that people were hiring closers. And at the time I had no idea what a closer was. And it seemed simple enough. The more webinars I watched, the more I went down that rabbit hole. I'm like, well, doesn't seem like there's a big learning curve. It definitely doesn't take any tech, which was great for me. Right. And it didn't seem like it took upfront cash. So I was like, this might be the thing. And I started to get more excited. And I already knew how to talk to people. And the people promoting remote sales were running the numbers. Right? I started seeing, and some of you might have seen this, they run the numbers, this many calls, this many closes, and they talk like it's just no big deal, but the numbers were huge. And I couldn't argue with the logic. When they do that math, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Right? So I looked into it more, and finally I was like, I have nothing better going on. I just decided to take the leap. I was starting to run out of savings. At this time, I had already left Canada. I've been traveling around and I was spending money mercifully. And I actually landed in South Korea. I was with a friend who was doing some teaching there. So he had an extra room for me, charged me a little bit of rent, and just boom, let's go. So I needed to make this work very quickly. Now, luckily for me, Right? All the people selling training told me this was quick and easy money. This was the first step for me in realizing that I have to be very cautious about who I listen to in this industry and in line in general, right? So I thought, okay, quick, easy money, that's perfect for me. And it was not quick or easy. For the first 3.5 months, I did everything the gurus were telling me to do, everything. And like I was staying up all night because of the time difference. I was starting work at 8 p.m. and I would finish around 9 a.m. in the morning, right? I was a zombie. I'd landed a couple jobs, but either the lead flow was trash or the sales process was unproven or there was no integrity in the offer. Right? I was basically struggling to make $1,000 a month if I was lucky. That was a good month for me. And I was spending more than that. And so I got to a point where I had 1 month of living left in my savings account. That was it. There was no like pushing it off, and not like a really good month either. I'm talking like, staying in, ramen noodles, bus pass. That's about it. I was starting to freak out because not only was I going broke, but I was also in a foreign country on the other side of the world. And anybody who's been to Korea knows it's not cheap. It's not, like some of the other countries that you can live off, $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Like I was spending more than I was bringing in, and I had no credit cards. I had no extra benefits or anything to draw off of. Right. So I hit a point where I had been promised results in 21 days. I was well past that. I was promised 10K a month. Right? I had nowhere near that. I was told $900 per sale, and I was barely scraping that by in a full month. Right? I was told complete control over my schedule, and I was able to set my own times. I don't know what they were talking about there, but I had not experienced that. I was working more than I worked in my corporate job. And that was a big reason I left, was because I had no control over my schedule. I was told when I entered this industry, total time freedom. I don't know where I was looking, but I was not finding anything like that. Right? I was feeling like an absolute failure. I had all the doubt, all the fear. Right? I felt like a loser. I didn't have any money or any time to do anything else or try a new project. Right? So I was like, I'm trapped. I have to make this work. So I decided at that point, either these people are misleading me or they have no idea what they're talking about. Either their strategies are outdated or they're not anticipating how much more difficult the job market had been. Right. And so I just decided to stop listening to everyone else. And I realized if I was going to be successful, I would have to carve my own path. I would have to look outside of the people trying to sell me something, right, and figure out what it actually took to be successful in this industry. I had heard that people were successful. I knew it made sense, but I hadn't hit the bullseye yet. So I took an evening and just started thinking about everything I'd learned, everything that I was doing wrong, all the problems that I was facing, like just starting to look for clues. And the first thing I found, which was a big problem, was that I was working with the wrong companies. I realized that like I'm actually doing a really good job. I'm actually working hard. I'm showing up, but the no-shows were too high, or the leads were inconsistent, or they were the wrong people. I'm like, I feel like if I had the right company, I would have better results. And so the companies that I was working with were barely making enough to support the CEO. Right? They were making 10K a month, 20K a month, if they're lucky, 30K a month sometimes, right? And it seemed like everything that they were doing was experimental. Every time it was going to get better. We're going to change this, we're going to do that. And the same things kept happening, right? So I'd been through a couple of those companies and realized that's not going to cut it. Right? And I figured if I was going to have any chance at success, I was going to have to get in with a great company. That was my only shot. It's like, I have one last chance at this. I have to get in with a great company. Then I can really see, because I was still doubting myself at this time. So I had to see, like, if I'm with a great company, and again, if I remove all the excuses of like, oh, it's bad leads, oh, it's this, right? Like I started to doubt myself, and I'm like, okay, if I'm with a great company, then I get to see if it's me or not, right? Then I have nothing to hide behind, right? So I started writing down. We do this now in UCM, but it's been developed. But at the time, I was starting to write down what I would need from a company for me to do my job. what I would need from a company for me to be confident that I could perform in that position. And so I things down like a company with proven marketing, a company that was already producing great results in sales. Right? I started writing down all the little things I would need to do my job properly, onboarding, maybe some training, good brand recognition. I just started writing down like my dream company, what the elements would look like. And I also wanted to be surrounded by other salespeople making great money. That was one of the things I put on the list, right? Not only because it would give me confidence, but also I would start learning from people that were doing better than me. Because I realized, like, okay, if I can model successful people, like I'm hardworking, I can do this. But if I'm the only person on the team and something goes wrong, I instantly just doubt myself. Right? I was being really hard on myself. I was tired of being that one-man sales team. And so I didn't know it at the time, but this was the foundation of what I built, which is the top-down networking strategy. This is how it was born, right? In deciding all the things that I needed to do my job, I realized I'm going to have to go at the top. Before, I had been going with who's hiring, right? Or start at the bottom and work my way up. And I realized that if I was going to make this work, I had to do the opposite, right? So for 7 years since, I've been developing this strategy to make it the most effective way to land six-figure opportunities. But at that time, it was just a prayer. Honestly, I would love to say it was some genius strategy, but it was through desperation and through urgency that I made this work. Now, it's a simple concept, but it's hugely impactful. Instead of looking at who's hiring and scrolling mindlessly through Facebook groups for job posts and saying, I'm interested, right? What I did, I started creating a hit list, right? Kind of like, you know, in those like FBI movies when they have like the mob boss and they have the henchmen and like they start building that triangle down of like, this is kind of the whole industry, right? I started doing that. Who's the top player, right? So very simply, I just chose a niche and I made a list of who I thought were the top 50 businesses. Who were the top 50 business owners? Who were the top 50 coaches in that industry? Now, we go into detail on how to research these companies, what to look for, right? It's a hugely underrated skill, is being able to research top employers. But I just started going off and I was just taking guesses like, oh, that company looks more successful than that. Okay, I'm going to put them on the list. And that's what I did. I stopped when I had a list of 50. Right? So my idea was very simple. If things are going to turn around quickly, I need to be working with top players. I need to be working with people that have their shit together, right? So that I can just apply my work ethic and my desire to learn. I knew that I could get better if I was around better people, right? But I'm not going to get better being around people who are constantly struggling, right? It's nothing against these business owners, right? I was struggling. I had no room for judgment of like, oh, I can't believe. No, I think a lot of closers get in this place where they're either entitled and they're looking down on these businesses. Like operating a business is hard. Marketing is hard, right? Especially when you've never done this. So I'm not judging these businesses. I'm just saying, if I want to accomplish the goals I want to accomplish, I can't do it with them starting out. Maybe I'll get to a point where I can help these businesses, but right then in that moment, I needed to have a business that already had these things in place. Right? So once I had my list, I realized that the rest of my problems were coming from my approach. Even though I walked away from the 9-to-5, I was doing the same shit I used to do there. I just brought it into remote sales. I realized, looking at the things I hated about my life in that moment, I realized it was all the same stuff that I hated about the corporate job and the 9-to-5. I realized that I had just traded a 9-to-5 for a remote 9-to-5. I was in the remote rat race. Right? And so the process that everybody used, myself included, right? I search for jobs, I apply for jobs, I interview for jobs, and then I just take whatever offer I get. That was the process I was using. And then I'd get on and realize, oh, this is not what I was told. And then I would waste a month and then realize back to the job board, right? Go through the same process 3 or 4 times before I realized this is not the way. Right? I have to do something different. So I just started thinking about success, not success in remote sales. I think that's a big problem that a lot of people face, is they start thinking that this is some weird industry that doesn't work like anything else, right? And because a lot of gurus sell you on the idea because they want you to need them, So they have to make it some mysterious, like unknown industry, some secret. It's not a secret. It's remote and it's sales. It's been happening for a long time. Right? So I thought, okay, well, I don't know about success in this industry, but I know about success in general. I had been reading lots of books and, following great people, and I knew what greatness looked like. And so I started thinking, well, maybe I can model, instead of modeling these trainers and these gurus, maybe I can just model successful business owners. The most successful people I know are entrepreneurs. So I decided that, okay, well, what happens if I treat my career like a business? What would happen? Can't get any worse at that time. That was the good thing about it being so bad. It couldn't get any worse. So I'm like, well, if I started treating my career like a business, at least I'd have a lot more reference points. I had a lot of access to business strategies. I've seen and heard how other people were running their business, right? Speaking, public speaking, books, all that stuff. So I had a lot of resources on business. So I was like, okay, well, it's worth a shot. So from that moment on, I decided that I'm going to sell my service. I am a closer agency of one. I have one person for hire, it's me, but I'm going to provide a service. I offer a valuable service. So why am I waiting in the employment line? And I started thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, the more it doesn't make any sense. Like if I was a Facebook ad specialist, email marketer, copywriter, web design, any of those other services, I could go out and pitch my service and set my terms, right? And find a client, and I could take on multiple clients, and I could set parameters in which I would work with and who I wouldn't work with, right? I would have much more control. But in this industry, right, it's a lot of waiting in lines and hoping, right? And having other people tell you what you can and can't do, right? You don't like the leads, take it or leave it, right? We've given up control. And I think I won't go deeply into it, but it's the way this kind of funnel is set up, right? That a lot of online marketers are introducing people who have never been in this industry, right? And so they're guiding people in, and the people coming in don't realize that they benefit from you making the decisions that they want you to make, like what jobs to take, right? They're hiring you out and getting paid on that end. So instead of sending out applications, I started thinking about a pipeline. I started thinking like, okay, if I'm going to make sales and I have to make one sale, which is my service, right? Maybe I should build a pipeline. Made sense. That's what most successful businesses were doing, right? And so I started using these success principles from the best entrepreneurs I knew, and I didn't realize it then, but basically what I was doing was setting up an organic funnel for my service. It sounds really complicated, but it was actually much more simple than I thought and what I was doing before. It took less time, less headache, and I was getting better opportunities, right? Instead of telling people, hey, I'm a closer, this is what I'm doing, right? I shifted to telling them the benefit of working with me, what service I would provide, what benefit would they feel if I was on their team. Instead of telling them what I was looking for, I'm looking for full-time, I'm looking for this, I just did this training, I shifted to start asking them questions about their business. I started uncovering problems and challenges and goals, and then I catered my service and what I offer to meet their needs. Sales 101. And that change was profound. In 2 weeks, all it took was 2 weeks. I was struggling for 4 months before that. In 2 weeks, I had landed 8 interviews. Now that alone, pretty exciting. But one thing I noticed right off the bat, they weren't like normal interviews. They weren't the classic, like, here's a list of questions and then here's the job or not, or we'll call you whenever we're ready. All right. All of a sudden, I was eye to eye with these business owners, and they were treating me with respect. They valued my approach, and it was more of a sales call than an interview. I had more control. I was asking more questions from them. I was gathering more information and then responding to that information. Right. So of those 8 interviews, I ended up with 6 offers. And these were different offers than what I was used to getting. These were offers where the top people on the team were making 30, 40, 50, 60K a month. 6 of them. Right? I've realized that probably 4 or 5 of them were 6-figure proven offers. And so I ended up taking one of the best offers. It was with, I believe at the time, it was with number 7 on my list. So that top 50 list I was talking about, I ended up landing a job with number 7. I think the top 3 never responded. 4, 5, and 6, I couldn't get them on, but 7 hired. So what happens is I actually went down the list, and because I started at the top, I went down, and if I got rejected the first 6 times, who cares? I ended up with the best opportunity available to me based on the service I was willing to provide, right? And the timing. So I decided that, okay, this already has worked better than anything I've ever done. So as a mindset, I'm going to keep running my career like a business. I thought of my employer that just hired me as my client. And that changed everything. It seems like a small shift, but it was game changing. I did everything in my power to provide the most exceptional service possible. I took ownership over the role. If I seen something that needed to be improved, right, I voiced my opinion. If there was something that I could do to impact the business, I did it. I didn't stop and just wait for the leads to come in, right? I was looking at no-show lists. I was figuring out what I can do to provide an exceptional service. So over the next 4 months, I had made over $120,000, right? That's almost 40x what I was making previously in the previous 4 months, 40x, right? I had decided to take on a second offer at that time. I was getting pretty good, right? But what I realized, it was much easier to sell and make that 40K than it was the 1100, right? Because the companies were doing what they needed to do for me to be able to do my job. And I was surrounded by other killers. These people were really good, and I was listening to their calls, and I was pumped up at meetings, and we were all collaborating and feeding off each other. And so I got better and better without any sales training, right? Just being involved in the organization made me better, and it was easier to sell. So at that time, I decided I want to take on a second offer. Using that same principle, I went through and I was like, well, I'd love to sell something super high ticket. At the time, I was in e-commerce, and I was selling something around 7,500, to 12K. I wanted to take on something bigger, right? I wanted to see if I could do something with lower volume leads, but every time I sold, it was a big commission. And so I took that same concept, build my web of like all the offers that I knew were above 25K. And I started implementing that same, building a pipeline, building an organic funnel towards my service. And I ended up landing one of the top masterminds at the time. They had a $40,000 offer. Now, they didn't have a lot of lead flow, which was fine because it was my second offer. But every time I closed a deal, it was $6,000. And I was closing about 1 to 2 a week. So all of a sudden, selling those 2 offers over the next 12 months, I made $438,000. That's probably what I made most of my career, if you add it up. That was game-changing money. Like I didn't know what to do with it. It was insane. Like my life changed forever. I went from like staying at $12 hostels to 5-star hotels, right? And not because like I'm some mastermind genius, but I just started positioning myself around great people, and I was able to learn what they were doing and mimic it, right? My life was changed forever. I was averaging $40,000 a month. I was remembering when I was excited when I made my first 40K a year, right? And now I was doing that in a month. And not to mention the best part, I was doing it while traveling around the world. I've been to 36 countries in the last 5 years. I'm recording this from Colombia right now, right? Like I was living the life that I dreamed about and almost gave up on because I was following other people's instructions that wasn't working. And I see that so often now. People start to doubt themselves. Maybe it's not me. And I would just question. Maybe it isn't you. Maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's the advice. Maybe it's the strategy. Maybe you just need to be around different people, hearing different things, following different instructions. Right? One thing that I never would have imagined is because I started positioning myself as a service provider, because I started taking myself serious, other people started taking me serious. Right? Because I started asking the right questions and gathering information before sending out some cold outreach of I'm a high ticket closer, this is what I'm looking for, right? No one cares. all of a sudden I started being interested in people's businesses and their problems and their challenges and their goals. And what I realized was not only could I land offers with ease, right? I had total job security, not individual job, but knowing that hours or maybe days I could be in another six-figure position. That felt good to me. But what I never anticipated is people kept coming back to me curious about what other services I could offer. Whenever I did my job well, people wanted to do more work with me and they started referring me to other people. And so I started again, like, what would an entrepreneur do? What is the best business strategy here? And I started to realize there was a real opportunity for referrals. And so I started developing a referral strategy. I started connecting people who were coming to me from other businesses, right? And I connected them to other service providers. I started connecting them to the people that they needed to talk to. When I was maxed out, right, I would send them over. And so I had built my network up quite large, right? And I had built it on integrity. So people trusted me. And so they kept coming back to me. And so those businesses started paying me a referral fee. And I calculated at the end of the year, my second year in remote sales, I made close to $50,000 on referrals alone. Not commissions, not me doing the work, but like, hey, have you met this person? You should meet. Then they connect. If they buy that service, I was getting paid for that, and good money. Sometimes as much as my commissions for a 2-minute conversation and a connection. It was the easiest money I've ever made. So I started at that point to get curious about what's happening here and how can I continue to expand this business? What's next for me? And then I started keeping track of everybody I was referring and what services I was referring. And I thought, well, what would be the most lucrative service that I could start doing myself that I also have the integrity of being able to deliver a good service, right? And so I realized that I was referring a lot of salespeople to opportunities. A lot of people were asking me, hey, do you know any other reps like yourself? And so I was turning down a lot of those offers that I was getting. People wanted to work with me. And I'm like, well, people want to work with me. I already know how to find these opportunities. A lot of people seem to struggle with these. What if I started a recruiting business? Right? And it was like the day I started, I had 8 clients because people were already coming. I had built that organic inbound where people were coming to me and I had the opportunity to turn them down. It's a good feeling. Right? So I figured at that point, why not expand my business to not only offer my service, but connect other salespeople with solid offers? That seemed to solve a problem in the marketplace. And so everything was perfect until it wasn't. You know, the first few people I would connect with my friends or people in my network, and then the recruiting started to expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger and more unique, specific needs. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. I'll just expand into finding more salespeople, because most of my network at that time was business owners, right? I had a smaller network of salespeople, but I'm like, oh, well, it can't be that hard to find good salespeople. And then I was trying to place salespeople, and I was hit horribly with how bad they were at preparing, how horribly they've been prepared for this marketplace. Right? At the time, I found out there was 2 main sources of training in this industry, 2 main online marketers that were presenting, you know, this is the industry to get into. And I won't give you names, but the initials were SM and DL. You may be able to figure it out. I was astonished to hear that people were paying upwards of $10,000 for training, and they had no idea what they were doing. I know this because I was interviewing them. I was doing all the interviewing and the sourcing myself. They had no idea how to enter this job market. Most of them had no idea what the job market was, right? They had no idea how to deal with recruiters. They had no idea how to deal with my clients. I'd be setting them up and they'd just be horrible through the whole process. They had no idea how to properly prepare for an interview. They had no idea how to ace an interview. They had no idea how to select the right offer. They had no idea how to onboard. And a lot of them only had one way to sell. They only knew how to follow one script. And they had nothing outside of that. No one had ever talked to them about the basic principles and what goes on here and how to adapt to different selling styles and different markets and understanding campaign. None of it. They basically paid $10,000 for a script and an opportunity to role play in a fake pipeline. That was it. And I couldn't believe it. I was amazed at how many people were in the same situation. It was like the market was just flooded all of a sudden. And the more I looked into it, the more I found out that these companies were pumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into ads to target the make money online crowd. And once I found that out, I was like, it brought me back to when I first started and my early days and my struggles. And I started to feel really bad. I was connecting with these people and I was like, the path you're on, I know this path because I've been on it. And a lot of these people were good people and they went into massive debt to take this program because the program had told them 10K in 21 days. So they were like, well, yeah, I'll take the debt on, but I'll make the money back in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. 6 months later, they're just ringing up more and more debt and they're stuck. And so at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to expand this. I'm going to put a hold on the recruiting for a little bit, right? And I'm going to help these people. And so I decided to do something about it. And that was where Undeniable Closer was born. I decided to build what I wish I had when I started out. Not some like online marketing thing. I don't even know how to market, honestly, but something that I needed when I started out, something that fixed the problems of feeling hopeless and frustrated and not knowing what the heck you're doing. Right? I realized that people need more than just a course or a program. So I figured what was the most important things in my life, the most impactful areas, what was personalized mentorship, having a mentor in my corner, right? And I really like the Mastermind format where you're around like-minded people and you're challenging and feeding off each other's energy. Again, like that was a big impact in getting in an organization and making 40K a month was being around greatness, right? And so I thought, okay, well, let's combine those two. Let's have the personalized mentorship so each person gets individual advice, but let's make it in a mastermind format so we can feed off each other. And sales has always been this like independent sport. Let's make it a team sport. Let's use that collaborative effort to have a competitive advantage. And so I started just writing it out. I knew I wanted people to know the truth about remote sales. I wish someone told me the truth in the beginning. Right? I wish I had access to honest and transparent advice. I'm not afraid of hard work, but I want to know what I'm getting into. I don't like being tricked. I don't like someone pulling the curtain back and being like, what is this? Right? I wanted to give honest and transparent information about this space and what it actually took to be successful so people can make decisions up front. I realized that people need more support, more guidance, right, than anyone else was delivering at the time. Right? These other programs had little to no support. And if you were getting support, it was usually from a student that went through it a month ago. Right? And it was a blind leading the blind. Right? So the students never got to talk to the person who sold them the program in the first place. That person in the ad never showed up. And I realized that people need help developing in all areas necessary for success, not just sales, but the personal side, the professional side, the career, the sales training, yes, but everything, the whole package. Because if you pull one of those things out, you're not going to be successful. And everybody was promoting, you only need this one skill. But I talked about this before. There's more than that. There's so much more than that. And you don't realize until you're in it how much goes along. Or when you're struggling personally, you realize how little objection handling actually matters if you can't get your shit together in your normal life. If you're struggling with depression or imposter syndrome or any of these things, right, that takes precedent. So people need support across the board. They needed someone who actually cares and is going to take the time to get to know them on an individual basis and give them personalized advice based on their situation, who knows their strengths and their weaknesses, right? Who can give, okay, this person wants to work part-time and spend time with their family, and this person wants to take over the world. They're going to have different paths. They're going to have different trajectories. So that personalization was everything to me. And so that's what I did. I started Undeniable Closer Mastermind, and I opened up a case study for 5 people, and 55 people signed up. We sold out 10 times. Right? That was just over 2 years ago now. And since then, we've helped hundreds of people transition into the remote sales space and earn six figures a year and become a better version of themselves. Just overall, right? 2 years, we've yet to get a negative review. Not one negative review, right? Not anybody that said, hey, they overpromised and underdelivered, right? Instead, we have some people who haven't left our community. They haven't left the mastermind. They've been there 2 years. People like Alvaro, who we stopped counting his ROI on UCM after it surpassed 25,000%. Think about that, 25,000% return on investment. After he got to about 400K in earnings, we stopped counting. Right? Or people like Natalie, who took on the digital nomad life. She's been traveling around, living the dream. I built her personal brand and her reputation. She's turning down offers left and right. She can go get an offer today. She's making her dream income on her own terms. There's so many stories. I'm not going to bore you with all the stories. I know them all because I've kept the group small and taken the time to be influential and impactful in the lives of each of our students. You could ask me about any student in UCM right now, and I could tell you exactly where they're at, what they need, what they struggle with, right? What's their limiting beliefs? Is it imposter syndrome, procrastination, perfectionism, right? When I can push them, when they need a shoulder to cry. I know these things. Right? Because I've taken the time to get to know each individual. Because UCM was built on the idea of what happens when you care more about student success than company growth. There's no company out there that's doing that. No. And I'm not saying anybody that wants to grow big is bad. It's not it, right? I understand the attractiveness of selling a course as a program and scaling huge, right? Financially, it makes much more sense than UCM. But it doesn't get success. It doesn't work for most people, right? When I seen that companies were having a 5% success rate, meaning 100 people join, 95% fail, I just couldn't live with myself if that's what I replicated. Right? So since then, I've brought on some amazing coaches. We have the best organization. I am blessed to be around the people I'm in because we share the same core values of integrity and honesty and compassion and all the things that we need to be able to make a difference. Right? And we have people specifically focusing on network and referrals. We have, people that are able to walk people through step by step to get six-figure opportunities. We've developed a world-class personal development program within UCM. That alone could rival some of the other personal development programs. And that's just one aspect of UCM, right? Because I see how many people struggle with the fundamentals of mindset and professional development, right? We cover it all, start to finish. There is nothing that someone needs to be successful that we don't cover. I promise you that. Each student has access to over 80 hours of live small group coaching. It's very interactive, right? We're asking questions. I'm putting people in the hot seat, right? There's nowhere to hide. Over 800 hours of recorded coaching calls, right? More than any program out there, I tell you that by far. Right? Our training portal covers the most important topics and strategies essential for success from start to finish, from someone who knows nothing about this industry to someone who is top of the leaderboard making six figures. Right? And then, of course, relentless support and guidance around the clock. One of the things that has made UCM so successful is there's nowhere to hide. There's a lot of programs that forget about you as soon as you pay them. Right? And if you show up, doesn't really matter. If you don't show up, doesn't matter. We're not that. I will be on everybody's ass who doesn't show up. We are pushing our students towards success every single day. It's not like, oh, I had a bad week or 2 weeks. No, like, what are you doing today to move you forward? We're checking in with them. We're making sure they're accountable. We are like personal trainers in the remote sales arena. We do not let them get by without it. Right? We push them. There's no avoiding us. From the moment you join us, you book a fast track call on day one, and we lay out the first steps, and then we make sure that you take those steps, and then we make sure that you keep going. So the momentum that most people take 6 months to do, we cover that in the first week. We are there equally cheering you on and pushing you for more. There's both sides. That's why 95% of our students come to us after another program fails them. We are able to turn their struggles into a success story over and over and over again. Sometimes we're the third or fourth choice for a student. They've tried every other program and they come to us as their last hope, and we get them success. That's why we take in the people who have been sitting in a pipeline for 4 months waiting for a job, and we get them their dream role within the first 30 days. Like, the results are massive. That's why we've built one of the strongest reputations in the space with no advertising. We don't have to tell people what we're doing. Our students are walking examples. They're walking success stories. They are the marketing, right? Our students' results speak for themselves. We will do everything in our power every day to propel each student forward until there is no difference between their dream life and their reality. That is my commitment. I will do and I tell every student this, I will do everything in my power to make sure you are successful. All you have to do is meet me halfway. All you have to do is show up. I don't care what you know. I don't care what you've been through, where you're starting from. I will do everything. I am a crazy person. I do not like to lose. And if you lose, I lose. That's not going to happen, right? We'll walk you through everything from transitioning into this industry to finding the right offer, to onboarding, to performance. No one even talks about the sales training aspect of UCM, but we have people that are implementing every week the things we're teaching, right? And top of the leaderboard across the industry. When you look out at some of the best people in this industry, you're going to find that they went through UCM. So I would love to be able to help some of you. But again, I cannot help the people that don't want to be helped. So if any of this resonates, if any of my story connects with what you've been going through, I know that this is the place, right? I will not take you on if I don't feel like I can help you. I will be totally honest if I feel like it's a lost cause or you're not part of the community, right? I want you to be honest with me, but we will decide together if this is possible, if what you're trying to accomplish, right, in the time you're trying to accomplish will work. And I will let you know. I will be brutally honest. Ask anyone in UCM. But if it's time to make a decision, if it's time to make a choice, I would love to have a conversation with you and decide if UCM is the right fit for you. I hope this was valuable. I hope you resonate with it. If you need anything, let me know. I'll put a link for an application in the description. But I appreciate you all so much. Have a great day.